So our sponsor today is GLSA. For those non-members who may be listening in, GLSA, or Group Legal Services Association, is a professional membership representing the legal services plan industry and provider attorneys. And joining GLSA is just a good way for solos and small firms to increase their business. Check it out at glsaonline.org. Okay, my name is Tom Martin. I'll be your host today. Our podcast is Social Media, What Is It Good For, with Nick Rishwain. I'm very excited to introduce you to today's guest, Nick, and I'm very pleased to have him as our guest. Nick is the Vice President of Business Development at Experts.com. He's one of the authors, or the author at Expertsblog.com, and the host and co-creator of Legal Tech Live. He's also the founder of a Facebook group that is the legal tech community and has a very active following, and I'm proud to be a member of that too. So, Nick, how are you doing today in Pleasant Hill, California?
I'm doing great. And actually, today I'm in the Central Valley. Tom, I'm in Stockton today. That's where experts.com is headquartered. And I'm just happy to be here with you. Thank you for having me on. And thank you to the GLSA for having me on. And appreciate you being a member in the legal tech community on Facebook and former guest of Legal Tech Live and just an all around good guy. I really appreciate that about you.
Well, thank you, Nick. I really appreciate that. Also, we did have you on a while back. I think it was for the New Year's resolution episode we had at the beginning of 2018.
Oh, that's
So,
right. Yep.
yeah,
I forgot
um,
about that.
yeah, it's been a while, and because it's been a while, I'm glad to have you back on the show. Um, can you tell me a little bit about what you do? I know I gave kind of a very minimal thumbnail sketch there, but I want to hear more about what you're doing nowadays.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Tom. I know I do a lot under a lot of different hats, and that confuses people. Uh, I am, as you mentioned, the vice president of client relations and business development for experts.com. Kind of see the day-to-day operations of experts.com, which is what I refer to oftentimes as a legal tech 1.0 company. We're an online marketing platform for expert witnesses and consultants, and we basically make it easier and cheaper for lawyers to find expert witnesses. We give experts the opportunity to market their services to experts and consultants, because we do have actually a broader range of visitors than just lawyers, although they lawyers are generally visiting our site to find expert witnesses for litigation. Um, but that's what they do. We're a subscription based service. Experts and consultants pay an annual subscription fee to join to market their services directly to lawyers who are looking for them for a wide variety of areas of expertise. I think we've got over 1,300 areas of expertise. So that is my day to day. That's where what I do day to day. Most days you'll see me and find me at experts.com VP on Twitter. And you'll notice that I'm on that Twitter handle from 8 to 5 generally, whether I'm here or in East Bay. And whether I'm in the office or in the East Bay, that's where I'm usually at from 8 to 5. And I've been doing that for just 9 years now. I've been with the company. And then working in legal tech, it kind of whet my appetite for other things that are happening in legal tech. Got some interest in a variety of things because I noticed things were really starting to change about 2014 or 2015. Things in my mind started to get pretty exciting in the space, where it seemed like it was heavy on case management, e-discovery related items. In the legal technology space, I started to see a lot more things such as your own Law Droid and issues with bots and artificial intelligence and natural language processing and machine learning and automation, and things were just really heating up in legal technology. And I saw what I hope will be a continued warming in the space and a lot of new companies popping up, whether they're servicing law firms, whether or servicing consumers directly. I started to get excited about the space, wanted to know more about others who were doing things in the space that I'd been working in for 4 or 5 years, and so started this show, Legal Tech Live, which is an online video show, which we push it directly to the Facebook legal community group, and then it's also replays are on our website at legaltechlive.com. And that's just a hobby. That's really just a hobby for me to keep finger on the heartbeat, meet people who are doing cool stuff in the space. I think that's how you and I met, Tom, and for me to inquire about things. It's really for my own stimulation, my own interest, and it's been fun. We've been doing that for about 4 years now, three and a half, 4 years, something like that, and then I do all sorts of side projects. So I stay busy. One of those side projects is I'm working with one of those legal tech startups now. I'm working with Text a Lawyer, who is working on lead generation for lawyers, and I am technically their CMO. So I just stay busy in the space. I like it professionally and personally, and it's a way to use my law degree without having to practice law.
That's fantastic. Well, I definitely understand having many irons in the fire. I enjoy doing that myself. But I'd like to learn more about your story. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you get here? Like, did you grow up in the
Yep.
Central Valley?
Yep, born and raised in the Central Valley, and family's still here. My family is in between here and, as we mentioned earlier, Pleasant Hill. So East Bay and Central Valley is where family is, and I've stayed near the family. I have a close family, big Lebanese family, many lawyers in it, and my father was one of those, and I decided, well, I wanted to go to law school. Strangely, he didn't want me to go to law school. He thought
Really?
he thought getting a business degree or a MBA would have been better. But I had seen how he thought about problems and how he took that law degree and went into business after practicing for several years, and he had gone into real estate. And I saw the way that he approached issues and how he could solve problems, and I really appreciated that. So I went on to law school. Um,
In retrospect, do you think you agree with them?
In retrospect, I do agree with him. I do agree
Yeah.
with him. I've got I've got a lot of lawyers in this family, uh, and very few of them are actually practicing. A
Huh.
lot of them went into business, generally real estate or some other business. And in retrospect, I do I agree with him? That's tough because there is that analytical thinking that the legal education gives you that I do think is really interesting and invaluable in many respects. But I did have to then go on and learn anything I've learned about business since then has been outside of law school. So so it's one of those things that law school doesn't teach you.
Yeah, for sure. And just going back for a second to experts.com, you
Sure.
said you've been working on that for 9 years now, right?
I've been with the company 9 years. So before that, during and after law school, I was working for San Joaquin County. I was a public guardian conservator, deputy public guardian conservator. So I took care of the financial and legal needs of those who could not take care of it themselves. And it was essentially in mental health for the county,
Yeah.
and acted as a guardian and conservator. And after about 5 or 6 years of that, I had no training, I had no interest in ever working in the mental health field, and it really burned me out. And
Yeah, I can
opportunity,
imagine.
yeah, yeah, when you're not trained for it, especially, I think it really has. You don't know what you're dealing with, and there's a huge learning curve, and it was quite exhausting. I learned a lot, but I don't know that I had the temperament or the interest to really excel in that field. And experts.com was looking to hire somebody, preferably with a JD. I had that. I wasn't practicing, and it sounded like a great deal to me. And I've been here since because I've really enjoyed my experience here. I mean, fascinating work with customers who are fascinating with amazing backgrounds, really highly qualified in such a wide variety of areas, and learned a lot from them. At some point, I started teaching them about the marketing aspects of things, and learning about how they could better do this themselves, and with our service, of course. We want them to be on our service, but we want that to complement their other marketing efforts. And so it's been just a great fit, perfect fit for me. And It's a small, nimble, and very powerful company.
And you'd referred to it as Legal Tech 1.0.
Right.
And w- tell me a little bit about what you mean by that and how that would differ from 2.0 or even
Yeah.
newer stuff.
Or newer stuff. So I think it was, Nabil Zoumout, our CEO, is really innovative guy, sharp guy, uh, and and he was when he created experts.com. He was a bankruptcy attorney, working down in Fresno, and he was starting to do Google, when 1996 Google searches were kind of up and running, and he was doing Google searches and seeing what information he could find about people online when he needed an expert for a trial or for litigation. And so he came across, boy, I have to call this broker,
Mhm.
and I have to ask them, hey, do you have anybody in this area? And they would then send him 5 blind CVs, so you don't have anybody's name, and you pick one that you think might be the right person, and you don't get to communicate with them prior to hiring them, and, and then you have to sign you gotta do what is it, finder's fee, and then there's a markup on every billable hour. And he thought, boy, this is inefficient, it's costly, and we need to, and with the internet and with the information that's available on the internet, I should be able to do this without the middleman, essentially.
Mhm.
And so that's how experts.com got started. It was, in fact, supposed to be a practice management system, uh, cloud-based practice management system, and then the dot-com bubble bust happened in 99 and 2000. He ends up
Yeah.
as the uh, majority shareholder, buys out everybody else, and had to kind of refocus or pivot, and pivoted it into a marketing platform. Or at that early stage, it was known as a directory. We're quite a bit more than that now. We encompass a heck of a lot more than just a directory today. But so, 99, 2000, it was a listing service or directory that was not uncommon in .com. That's what a lot of folks were doing. You populate it with a lot of information. Ours happen to be highly qualified individuals who usually testified in litigation related circumstances. And so that's why I call it 1.0, because it was essentially an online service to help people and eliminate that middleman. It was early stage, right around the time that people were doing, e-discovery was becoming bigger and bigger, and so it was one of the kind of the first ones in. It wasn't using natural language processing. It wasn't using chat bots. It wasn't. We were, strangely enough, we were cloud based long before the term cloud based ever existed.
Yeah.
So our community, the experts and the attorneys could communicate with each other directly through our service when we processed a referral. So we were cloud based long before that was terminology that was being used. So I think of it as, we've been around, 20, almost 20 years now under current management, and so that's essentially 1.0 in my mind. And
Yeah.
things have certainly changed with what we're seeing now with the automation, and we still highly focused on customer service, where there's a lot more software as a service style legal tech coming out these days.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's a common story, right, of disintermediation that seems to have been the start of experts.com as well.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so for the past 9 years, I know, as you said, you've seen a lot of change in the industry, especially, well, when I say industry, I mean legal technology, and that, um, I mean, definitely, as we've both seen over the past 3 years, things have started to heat up a lot, especially
Hmm.
this past year. The level of investment's been crazy.
Yep.
What do you what do you think has given rise to that?
So I have a kind of a combination experience here, that kind of feeds into my understanding of it. And again, this is in my own, just in my opinion. I'm not using my necessarily my data or others' data to back this up. My my opinion is something that we saw at experts.com uh, happen when the Great Recession hit. And we've seen since the Great Recession, uh, many of the top AmLaw 100, AmLaw 200, we see them on our site. All, a lot of those, probably 30 or 40 of them, are regularly coming back to our site and looking for experts daily. And I think a big part of that was things have gotten really competitive financially at these big firms, and so many of these firms fight for contract. If you're not in like the top 10, maybe you're fighting for contracts, or you're putting out requests for proposal when somebody major like Nike or Amazon has a litigation, and they need litigation counsel or outside counsel or something like that for a major litigation. They are doing RFPs as though they were just selling their services and trying to find all sorts of ways to differentiate and lower costs, so that partners can continue getting paid. And one of those really expensive things that you get is an expert witness in litigation. Can be really expensive. So if you take um, an expert who charges 500 or $700 an hour, and then you add a 30 or 40 or 50% markup on each billable hour because you went with a broker, you're now paying an insane amount of money for no additional service. So and if it's a law firm is paying for that out of pocket, or their client is paying for that out of pocket, th- they want to know what else they're getting for that money. So I think that was a big shift in the market. Everything got really competitive because legal services are generally really expensive. And this is another cost that was really expensive and can be, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a particular litigation, or even more in a major litigation, like we're seeing in the opioid crisis. So I think big firms are trying to cut costs and make themselves and differentiate themselves any way possible. So that was one thing that I think has led to this kind of heating up in the legal tech market. We need to do things faster, more efficient, that and more, not just efficient as far as time consuming, but cost efficient as well. So I think those things are major contributors to what we're seeing is the legal tech boom, if that's what we're calling it, or the early stages of hopefully what we'll see as legal tech boom. I think the Great Recession was a huge contributor to that, and I also think that many people who were practicing uh, in during the Great Recession and were potentially laid off, went off to do things similar to what I have done. Is how can we use our legal education in a different way and maybe sell a service to big law or sell a service to solos and small practitioners so that they can see so that they can do their job better. So I think there's a lot of that going on, and I hear about this from solos and smalls as well. There are just fewer and fewer things that they're able to charge for, so they're looking to see how they can be more efficient, more effective with their time so that they can work on those things that they can bill for instead of wasting time on stuff that they're, unable to really bill for because the client can't afford it. So I think that's a real big uh, contributor. I also think that access to information and the ability to build things cheaper, build pretty successful, pretty helpful tools at a cheaper price than maybe you could have 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And lots of engineers and that you can hire in elance or freelance type of thing to build an app for you. Uh, I think the costs have gone down significantly, so I think it's easier for people to build really great tools for lawyers to use in their practice. That's
Yeah.
just sort of maybe scratching the surface of that. I'm sure you've got other views as to how this has occurred as well.
Well, but I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that those are major shifts that have happened and definitely contributed to the uptake in legal tech. And like you said, it hopefully is the beginning of this boom. Knock on wood.
Knock on
That
wood.
Yeah, that it continues. But okay, let's talk about social media.
Sure.
Um, I think it's incredible that some lawyers in this day and age are still skeptical about social media, especially in this era where it seems to be the first line of communication for the president of the United States. It's being used, and everyone is paying attention to it. I mean, we see Twitter in the news all the time, and
Hmm.
I was wondering, you know, the the question that you typically get asked um, by a lawyer, and I've heard this pretty often. I don't know if you've heard it, is does social media really work? Right? And
Hmm.
kind of implied in that question is, does it get me a client? Right?
Hmm.
Like,
Sure.
do I post something on whatever it is, and do I instantly get a client? What
Right.
what do you think is wrong with that mindset?
So I think part of that mindset is that's part of what's wrong with that mindset is the get rich quick kind of mentality.
Mm.
Oh, so if I post something here, I'll get a client. Well, I don't know. Were you able to read one contracts case in your contracts class and then pass the test at the end of the year? No, you had to put effort in, and so I think that's it's these things. Social media, it takes effort and it takes time. But it does result in greater brand awareness and it does result in new clients and it does result maybe less than new clients or more important, maybe you get fewer new clients, but maybe you build because other attorneys in your community are watching what you're doing on social media. And I guarantee you, some of them will be jealous if you're the one who's leading it. And maybe you become the lawyer who gets more referrals from other lawyers because they see you um, as an authority in a certain space or incredibly knowledgeable in a certain space, and you remain top of mind for other attorneys in your community. And all of a sudden, I get people asking me stuff all the time. They see my stuff, they don't like it, they don't comment on it, they don't do anything. I don't know that they're even seeing it. And then I hear something like, "Hey, I see what you're doing online. It looks like great, man." Things, yeah, I wish I could do more of that. It's just like a 2 minute video. And it took me 2 minutes to put it together. It took me maybe 5 to 10 minutes total to put it up. And So it's effort. It's not the, oh, I post something and all of a sudden I have a new client. That's
Mm.
advertising. That's advertising, and that still takes time. Separate that. But I think I'm sorry, you know me, Tom. I get talking and then I go on a roll. Probably went too far into depth for saying I think that they have a get rich quick mentality about social media.
No, it's quite all right. I appreciate what you're saying. I completely agree too. And by the way, you made me think of it a completely different way, which is it is a get rich quick mindset behind that. I didn't think of it that way before, but um, it is also miscategorizing it
Yeah,
as advertising. Um, and I think that it definitely is something that needs continued effort, just like any relationship
any
does,
relationship.
right? And that's really what you're creating when you post and when you reach out is this relationship that, as you said, you might not even be aware that you're creating it.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah, because people are following you or watching you, and they develop that, and so
And I'll give you this as an example. The quickest example I can give you is you and I got to know each other through social media. We've met once in person.
it's true in New
Mm,
Orleans.
in New Orleans, yeah, and we and I have to tell you, and you don't have to reciprocate here, but I'm very fond of you. I think that you're a very decent stand-up person, and I like that about you, and that's all been through our social media communications and meeting once in person.
That you're right. Um, and actually, when we did meet up in New Orleans, I wish we had more time to hang out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and I'm looking forward to the next time that we do.
Yeah.
Um,
And so that's just proof of the relationship building.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and that's how lawyers need to think about it. And you can advertise through social media as well. And I ex- actually think that you should, but I don't want I want people to use it as building relationships with those in your community, those outside your community, who then uh, may need a referral. Somebody in New York's always needing to find an attorney in California, or vice versa, or somebody in
mhm,
Nebraska is, hey, somebody reached out to me and they're looking for somebody in Henderson, Nevada. Do you know anybody? I mean, uh, it's not. Uh, this is a common thing I say to members about experts.com is by virtue of they're like, well, so where do you guys focus in California for your experts, or you focus, in the US? And I said, by virtue of being online with our
right.
domain name, we're international just by virtue of that. And we, serviced a law firms internationally on many occasions. So, and that's social media is very similar to that. You don't know who might be looking from New York or Pennsylvania at the stuff that you're doing in Paradise, California, if you're doing it really well, or if you're likable, or a variety of things. And you don't know when they might have a family friend who hears about you, a family friend who is in your area or near your area in need of a lawyer.
Definitely. Um, for old school lawyers, it it's kind of like going to the Rotary Club or going to some social club where you go out there for FaceTime to shake
Yep.
hands, rub shoulders, meet people, hand out your card. You know, um, although I I could go into like whether or not handing out the card should be the primary thing, but
Right.
but it's kind of this, it's similar in a way in that what social media does is it allows you to be social and to get to know more people than you would just sitting in your office.
Right.
So it's not that different, you know.
Not. I don't think it's different at all. In fact, I think, Tom, at the conference that we were at together, and I think one I went to later last year, and then one I went to earlier this year. I, I didn't even. I think I came home with a 4 or 5 cards. I handed out maybe less than 10, and I only hand them out if somebody asks for them. But
Yeah.
what I will do, depending on the tech level of sophistication, is I'll go and connect with that person on Twitter, or I'll go and connect with that person on LinkedIn, uh,
Right.
and 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 I rarely, the card thing. I maybe bring 20 cards to a conference.
Yeah. Yeah. They are becoming a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Um, so let me ask you, for in terms of social media, what platforms do you use? Are they different from each other in what they can do? Why do you use one as opposed to another?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm usually spend my time on the kind of the main four for legal technology and fun and family and things like that would be uh, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. That is predominantly the four that I spend time on. I used to spend quite a bit of time on Snapchat and made some great relationships there as well,
Mhm.
with people all over the world. It's just a matter of you only have so much time in a day, so you really have to focus your energy. But Twitter seems to be, certainly in the legal tech and often in the legal space, a really great spot to really truly interact with a wide variety of people. And yes, I use each of these differently. Twitter is one of those places where you can really communicate with people that you couldn't otherwise get in touch with. I believe that's how I found you as a guest for Legal Tech Live, was through Twitter. Certainly in the legal tech space, Twitter seems to be the predominant force. It's also more fun than LinkedIn in my mind.
For sure.
Uh, and I, I like to have fun on Twitter. Uh, I like to have fun all the time. I mean, that's really, if we're not having fun doing these things, what's the point? Is kind of one of my frame of mind. But you can still do that professionally, and you can still have a sense of humor without being a bad person or doing things that might come back to bite you. And I know lawyers are always concerned about that. Twitter is one of those places where you can have some really professional conversations, fast moving conversations, and get to know some folks who are going to potentially be referral sources, potentially be clients, because you're maybe out there sharing information. Certainly LinkedIn has value, but it's a ever changing sort of process over there. To all my experts, should you generally have a LinkedIn profile, as do most lawyers. Oftentimes that's the starting point for people, for professionals in social media, uh, because they go, oh, okay, this one's related to business. I'm comfortable there. Uh, but it's a lot harder to show personality and likability and things like that on LinkedIn.
Mm.
Uh, I think, but it's a great way to showcase your knowledge and your expertise and your professional credentials. But I do see a lot of people just using it as a publishing platform like they used to do for Twitter, and less of an engagement platform. So I just see a lot of people posting article after, or link after link after link to article after article after article, and not doing a lot of engagement. So I think there's some problems there, because if you're really not engaging with people and communicating with them and building that relationship, uh, it's probably not going to do you a heck of a lot of good.
Right.
So LinkedIn, I think, has a way to go there, and they've also become really spammy.
Mm.
A lot of messages coming in, sales messages. Hey, we saw experts.com, or we saw text a lawyer, or legal tech live, and we'd like to do this for you. And you can just tell that they haven't read anything about you. So
Right.
yeah, I'm sure you get a ton of those. Uh, Facebook is a different animal today, especially with the heat that they've been under by governments around the world. And there's a kind of a split between family and friends and professional, and I use it almost entirely professional. A lot of activity. You can meet with a lot of lawyers and a lot of potential clients in those areas where you have interests. So if you are your hobby is hiking or biking or something like that, and you are a personal injury attorney, well, you might be the only personal injury attorney in one of those groups on hiking or biking or skiing, snowboarding. Uh, and you can get to know people in there who may then have injuries later on, and you don't have to be in there just selling, hey, if anyone needs a
Right.
lawyer, if you're hurt, but if you're communicating because you're already talking about the things that you enjoy personally, and then on top of that you happen to be a lawyer.
Right.
Oh, so the groups on Facebook have become pretty powerful, maybe more so than anything else, because the pages don't your company pages don't get the kind of play that they used to, the kind of visibility that they used to. But you probably should have one anyway, and
And
you need one for doing Facebook ads.
and you can have private groups too, right?
You could
It
have
doesn't have
private
to be
groups.
it doesn't have to be open to
Absolutely.
the public.
Yeah, and that's what we did with the legal tech community, because I wanted to get people who were more serious about this stuff. So I'm not looking to grow a massive community of 10,000 people who anything like that. I wanted people who were interested in legal tech to talk about legal tech, and I'm very reluctant in the legal tech community on Facebook. I obviously didn't make this an experts.com or a legal tech live group. I made it a I specifically uh, titled it community, and I rarely promote anything of my own in there other than we live stream into that group,
Mhm.
because I want people sharing and talking and communicating and growing the community together and discussing important issues in legal and legal tech, and how they intersect.
Right.
So, I try to do very little self promotion in that group, but we do stream the show into that group so that those who are interested can ask questions of our guests.
So let's talk a little bit about types of posts because
Sure.
um, you know, one is the publication type post that you'd mentioned where people are just kind of pushing content out. It might be a link, it might be just a statement about something or a PR type release. Hey, we
Right.
just upgraded our app or whatever. Um, but then there's um, the type of post that actually gets engagement. And that's
Hmm.
where on Twitter, for example, you get an actual thread of people going back and forth talking about a certain subject. And it's actually pretty cool when it gets going. But I guess my question for you is what do you think creates that engagement? Because people certainly would want that, but what kind of post do you think lends itself more towards engagement than not?
Are you talking LinkedIn specifically, or on just any
Let's
platform?
say Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that on Twitter, I think it's hardest to figure out which one uh, gets engagement. I do a variety of professional, and then I do try and if a thought makes me laugh, and I think it might make others laugh, I share that as well. And some of those get the best engagement for me.
Yeah.
Seems to be uh, I've tried to cut out links with images in them, or posts with images in them, because or I've tried to cut back on that. I still do publish on use Twitter as a publishing platform, and usually those will have pictures, but those will get a few clicks and not much engagement, and that's okay. If somebody I want that for those who are interested in that information to be able to find it. But it seems to me that Twitter has gone back a bit to its roots, and where more commentary, more text seems to get the most engagements. And certainly the polls seem to do a good job of getting engagement. You can run a poll over there, and if you've got a pretty active following, those do well. So
Oh, right.
if you're asking questions, the that type of thing usually does pretty good. because people want to answer questions, or um, they want to engage and they want to share their 2 cents. So certainly, this seems to have been common thread among social media for a long time. That if you're asking questions, and not just, a lot of the social media marketers will just ask questions solely for engagement. They don't, but it's really unimportant. I don't. I see in the legal tech communities, I see a lot more valuable engagement if you're asking a real question.
Mhm.
Hey, what do you think are the greatest attributes of automation? Can you give me your top three greatest attributes or characteristics of automation? What are the greatest three benefits? If you're really interested in that topic, and people can usually know if you're interested in that topic because you've probably communicated with them about this issue before, and so they'll give back, and you can really do some great research on Twitter.
Yeah, and I think, I definitely agree that a lot of the posts that are a little more personal, in the sense that they're casual and
Yep.
it's just like random stuff that we as human beings think think
Right.
about and talk about and laugh about.
Yeah.
Those are the things I think that really catch my eye and get me to participate because on one level, like we all know that, we're lawyers, we're professionals, or we're legal tech, you know, professionals, or what have you. We have some level of technical skill, but we're really not on there to be constantly engaging about that
Right.
because, that would be boring.
And you can see this. This is a real common mistake of lawyers. Is the new blog post is out and they shared it on Twitter, and then the next one, call us at 1-800 da 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 da, and it's entirely professional all the time, and they're using it strictly as publishing.
Yeah.
And I'll unfollow them. I'll just, I see a few of those in a row, and I don't see, or it's only retweeting something that others say. So you're not actually contributing anything personal or thoughtful or anything like that, and that gets real old real fast. And if people aren't liking and commenting on your stuff, pretty soon, because of the algorithm, they're not seeing your posts. So
Mm.
you may have 10,000 followers, but nobody's actually interacting with you, and so they stop seeing your posts because Twitter pushes it down.
So what about live? I know it's been around for a while now on Twitter and Facebook, but how do you use it and how do you think it's different from text posts?
Yeah, so live, I think, is really great to get to know people, which is why Ivan Raiklen, my co-host, and I decided to do live video show, because there are a lot of podcasts in legal. A lot of in there, so they're not interactive. It's just one way, you listening to uh, whoever the host and the guests are,
Yep.
and there's great value there. There's no doubt, but it is also, I think, maybe a little bit saturated, and many of the podcasts are difficult to differentiate, uh, and some of them are really dry. But I found that I like being able to see the personality of those people that I'm interacting with. I've also found that it is the next best thing to meeting people in person.
Mm.
So I've built some really great relationships with people through doing the live interviews and being on live with folks, because and I've noticed that you really get to know, like, and trust somebody a lot faster through live. And I think that it has a huge value. Lawyers get to show a little bit more personality than they would through text only, and I've often found that when I meet people then in person, um, it's a lot more hugs than handshakes, because you feel like you know the person more than you would just through text.
Oh, that sounds great. I got to switch over immediately. Uh,
I just
well,
think it builds a better relationship or a deeper relationship.
Yeah. No, I get it, and I've seen the interviews that you've had, and yeah, they're definitely more engaging. Um,
I appreciate
so
that.
let's see. Um, Besides experts um, and the live, what do you post about? Like, what? How often do you post? What do you? What would you like if somebody was asking you for the first time? Hey, I'm going to get into this social media thing. What what should I post about, and how often should I do it? Or are those
Yeah.
the
So
right questions to ask?
I don't know that they're the right questions to ask. So I'm pretty comfortable doing it now. So I don't know if those are the right questions to ask. I think when you've got a thought that you might find humorous or entertaining or educational or informative, and it's worth sharing, is when you share. Or you found an article that hey, this was a really good article, and here's why, and you share that. So there are some recommendations, guides maybe. They say I don't know that I agree with this anymore on Twitter, but they say you can never post too much on Twitter. I think the algorithm has changed that significantly, and so I think because it used to just be a fire hose of information and real time information, and your tweet would no longer be seen once it was. After about 20 minutes, it wouldn't be seen again because it had been pushed down by so many other tweets. So that's why it used to be that frequent posts and repeat posts were so common. Now, that's not true anymore.
Mm,
You show up in my feed because I've liked other stuff that you've posted, or I've shared, or I've commented on stuff that you've posted before. So you show up in my feed more regularly than so you don't have to constantly. They deliver that information to me as a user based on my previous actions. So I don't think that you have to post as often anymore on Twitter. So I think you should think
mm,
of what's the value that you're providing to the user on the other end. Do you have anything of value to share? If you don't, then don't share. But I think
yeah.
you do need to start sharing at least once a day till it becomes a habit for you. Until it becomes one of those things that you get used to doing. Okay, I've got one thing to share on LinkedIn. Maybe you don't have a comment or a text only post on LinkedIn for one day, but you found an article. Okay, well, in that case, you found something, you thought it was valuable, you shared it on LinkedIn. Do that. So I think you got to by starting, you have to share pretty regularly, um, just so that it becomes kind of a second nature to you to share things. Uh,
Right.
I think that and look, I don't always have time to share. I'm pretty active because I'm often in the office, and so I have Twitter open throughout the day, and I can interact on a regular basis. But there'll be days you won't see much from me, other than maybe a couple of things that I've scheduled to share because I'm busy. I get that, but I always come back to it.
Are there metrics that you track to see how your posts are going?
There's metrics on all of these platforms that you can track. If you have the paid subscription on LinkedIn, there's uh, better metrics for you on Twitter Analytics. Uh, and Facebook's got some great analytical tools for the standard sharing. I don't care as long as I feel like I'm building relationships with people that I want to build relationships with.
Mm,
So I don't really care what. Certainly, it's great when you see that 400 or 500 people have liked something that you've posted. That's, oh wow, that's interesting. Or 50 people have liked or commented on something that you've shared. Okay, well that's interesting. I wonder why that got so much more play than other stuff that I've done. Certainly, that's interesting to me, but it is not. It's a often referred to as a vanity metric,
right.
and not real useful to me. If I'm engaging with lawyers who might use the experts.com service, or I'm engaging with legal tech people that I want to have on the podcast or on the show, or those who might use our, service, who might be guests, or those that I've gotten to know and I'm continuing to build that relationship, or those who are friends, then that's the value that I see there. That value builds your brand. And I don't look at the number of followers, and I don't really care too much about the metrics. I care about the metrics if I'm doing paid advertising. Then I really care about the metrics.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about building relationships,
Yep.
not numbers.
Nope.
Uh, so, what do you think the future holds for social media? Do you think it's going to kind of keep on this track, or what ways do you think it might evolve?
That's a great question. I don't know how it's going to evolve. There's so much out there about privacy these days and concerns about privacy. Uh, I've decided to live most of my life on, I don't tell people everything. I don't tell the world anything I don't want them to know about me on social media, but I've decided to invest part of my time and share certain aspects of my life on social media because I think that's one of the ways that you build relationships with others. A lot of people know that I have nieces and a nephew. I know that you have two daughters.
Hmm.
And and I appreciate those things about others when they're sharing that. I think it's a better way to get to know people with greater depth. But if I'm going through a bad breakup, or I have, y- somebody in the family sick or something like that, I don't necessarily share that. It
Yeah,
depends on what I feel like sharing. So you don't have to share everything. You got to share enough to let people know that you're a human.
right.
Um, the hardest thing I had to share is when my little dog passed away, who had been with me for 13 years. And I'll
I know.
tell you, with all the negative comments about social media and how awful it is, the outpouring of love and kindness I got from that. By the way, she went viral. That was the most activity I'd ever had on anything I'd ever posted,
Yeah.
and it was viral for by my standard, right? Not by Fire Festival standard, but which is a standard I don't look to achieve.
I don't think
Um,
anybody does.
right,
Fire Festival.
but that really, okay, this is different. This is all the negative political stuff that I hear people talking about and how it's so detrimental. I got to tell you, there were some great, very kind and loving posts from people I had never met and I'd never interacted with. And you're like, okay, is it really all negative? So I don't think it is. I didn't get one. I didn't get one person who was spam or troll through that, and that was really kind of an interesting experience. And that was probably the most difficult thing for me to share because she was my buddy for so long.
Yeah.
Um, So I don't know how it's going to change. Watching the regulators, I think that something like Facebook, there's certainly a big push right now with Google, Facebook, and uh, I think Apple. There's certainly some regulators sniffing around for antitrust violations and things like that. So we may see uh, some breaking up of companies in the future. I don't think it'll be immediate, and they'll certainly fight it every step of the way. So how it'll change, I think you'll be required to share more personally uh, if you really want to build relationships. Not necessarily you'll have to share more. Not that you have to get more personal and more emotional, but I think you'll have to be really get to know people on a more personal level for it to be of great value to you. Facebook, I've already kind of decided that its greatest value is in advertising. The using their ads manager, I think is the greatest value because I don't notice that a lot of people are over there, certainly on my profile, posting anything that I care about personally or professionally most of the time.
Well, so we've talked a bit about legal tech and social media. and it's all good stuff. But I would like to know, what do you like to do in your spare time? Like, apart from the stuff,
S-
or do you have spare time?
so I don't have as much spare time as I once did. Uh, and I mean, I'm kind of heavily invested in everything legal tech. So really, Legal Tech Live is part of my spare time. That's just a hobby. That's not a moneymaker. Not to say that we wouldn't do it, but it's really a hobby. Um, and you know, I'm still trying to find my way in what I do, because I spent so much time with my dog and walking the dog and doing that. I have a lot more free time now than I used to. So I'm kind of trying to find my way into, all right, well, what do I do now with all this free time? I had an elderly dog for quite a few years there who had health issues, and so I was full-time caretaker when I wasn't in the office. But she was, I mean, not full time care. She just had to have medicines at certain times, and she loved to walk and she loved to go for rides. So, I'm a big fan of animals. I love animals of all types. So who knows? I may be in the near future volunteering around them. Although I imagine that's how I'll end up with another dog.
Yeah,
Um, and I like going to Tahoe. Go there a couple of times a year, and like spending time with friends and family, and with my nieces and nephew, and so those are the things that I do. I don't have one big. Used to do karate years ago, and I don't have some like major hobby like that anymore. I've gotten pretty busy with work and with side jobs and things that kind of keep the mind busy.
yeah, I definitely know what that's like. Well, thank you, Nick. I really loved getting to know you better. How can people follow up with you, follow you, keep in touch?
Sure, sure. So they can find me at experts.com. If they want to email me, they can email me at nick@experts.com. That's NICK at experts.com. Uh, and then there's Twitter, obviously, is a great place to reach me. You can reach me at experts.com VP, all spelled out, all one word. That's at experts.com VP. And then if they want to connect on LinkedIn, connect with me there. You can also find me on Legal Tech Live every Thursday night.
Fantastic. And thanks again, Nick, for being my guest today.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening into our podcast, Social Media, What Is It Good For, with Nick Rishwain. Again, this is Tom Martin. I want to thank GLSA for sponsoring. Remember, joining GLSA is just a good way for solos and small firms to increase their business. Check us out at glsaonline.org. See you next month.